Hello, sleepy voyagers. Tonight, your mission drifts beyond Earth to the quiet surface of Mars. The airlock opens, a soft pink sky waits, and red dust settles under your boots. Before we set out, tap like so this journey finds you again, and subscribe to join our crew for nightly voyages. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our star map of listeners around the world. Now take a moment to dim the lights, lower your screen brightness, and if you like, turn on a gentle fan for that soft background hum. Find a comfortable position and let your shoulders fall. You are slowly drifting out of the world you know. In a few moments you arrive on Mars. The airlock opens, and a soft pink sky welcomes you. The ground is quiet. The dust glows faintly in the fading light, and each step feels lighter than on Earth. Tonight, this red world belongs to you. You'll walk beneath Olympus Mons, rest by canyons wider than continents, and let the silence of space guide you deeper into calm. This is not just a mission, it's your dream unfolding on the surface of Mars. Imagine the first time your boot presses against the soil of Mars. The airlock door has slid open behind you, and now there is nothing separating you from the surface except the visor in front of your face. As you lower that foot, the weight feels strange, almost hesitant, as though this world itself is aware of your arrival. The contact is soft at first. Instead of the springy firmness of Earth's soil, you feel a powdery crunch, an almost brittle resistance, followed by a light scatter of tiny grains that disperse outward in slow motion. Each particle catches the faint sunlight like dust, hanging in the still air of a late afternoon on Earth. Except here, the sun feels farther, the light weaker, and every glint comes from a deep red mineral shining back. This is not ordinary dust. This regolith, covering the planet's face for ages, is rich in iron oxides, the element that paints the land the familiar shade of rust. It clings to fabric and plates of your suit, just as iron filings cling to a magnet. There is texture here, and it already begins to imprint itself upon your awareness. As you take another step, a thought begins to form. This is Mars, not a simulation, not a recording, but the world itself stretching beyond the horizon in every direction. You breathe in carefully, though you know the air in your suit is the only air you will ever draw here. It does not diminish the moment. Your footfall echoes not in sound, but in sensation. Faint compressions of surface grit, vibrations traveling through your boots into your legs, your bones recognizing that they are no longer grounded on their native world. On Earth, the simple pressure of walking goes unnoticed, for here every step becomes new. There is an awareness of gravity working differently on your frame. Muscles register less strain. Fingers tingle as blood distributes in new ways. The body is lighter, not weightless, not the floating drift of orbit, but an easing of burden. 38% of what you once carried now remains, and the contrast leaves you oddly unbalanced, a sense of both freedom and fragility at once. Your eyes adjust to the ground around you. What appeared from orbit as a desert plain comes alive in color and form now that you stand within it. At first glance it is barren. No plants, no flow of water, no life scurrying at the edges of sight. Yet the details draw you closer. Pebbles scatter across the surface with hues ranging from brick red to charcoal gray. Larger stones hold patterns etched by ancient winds, grooves carved over millions of years by dust storms that swept endlessly across the land. When you kick lightly at one patch of loose regolith, the grains arc through the thin atmosphere more slowly than expected, landing several feet from where they began, light, graceful, as though their own weight has been all but lifted too. These are small signs that the rules here, though related to Earth's, are tuned to another scale. As you stand motionless, one foot sunk half an inch deeper than the other, you remember old ground back home, wet grass after a storm, dry dirt under a hot sun, solid pavement that carried your stride thoughtlessly from place to place. Each surface on earth had its purpose, each memory tied to ordinary steps. Here the contrast is sharp. The ground is neither soft like soil after rain, nor firm like stone. Instead it lies in between, a sandy, powder-like crust atop harder volcanic rock, shaped not by water, but by ages of ancient activity and relentless winds moving across a dry planet. There is no smell here, yet memory supplies one, the faint metallic scent of iron or rust, guessed from what knowledge says the dust contains. That imagined scent mixes with the real sensation of standing on ground touched by no other life. The sense of lightness follows every step. You feel your center of balance change, gates stretching farther than you intended. A jump carries you higher for longer, little arcs in your motion, more graceful than anything your body would have performed on Earth. In another setting you might worry. Will your muscles weaken after months in this gravity? Will bones thin without the load they once bore? But tonight, those questions blur away, replaced by simple wonder at the reduced pull under your feet. You feel as if you are practicing an old skill for the first time. Walking becomes a slower art, steps drawn deliberately, movements measured against this new rhythm of Mars itself. With each careful stride, a calm takes hold. What initially brought a hint of unease, the alien surface, the barren appearance, the silence so complete it presses against your ears, has shifted. Your body recognizes not a threat but an invitation. The vast landscape offers no chaos, only stillness, only patterns of wind-sculpted rock and iron dust. Even the crunch against your boot soles becomes a soft rhythm, steady and grounding. Each sound from your suit, the hiss of circulating air, the low hum of systems, mixes into the silence in a way that feels natural. An inner music of persistence against the backdrop of emptiness. Ahead of you stretches the landing area, dotted with cargo canisters and equipment that will soon serve a greater purpose. They wait motionless now under the thin sky, shadows long against the regolith. In a short while you will shape them into shelter, a small protection against the cold and the dust. For now you keep walking in slow arcs, circling from the lander outward, gently pressing each patch of ground as if signing your presence into the surface. Each boot print lingers longer than you expect. With virtually no atmosphere to sweep it away, your steps may remain imprinted longer than any house built by human hands would on Earth. Generations later, if new explorers arrive, they may still find the shallow tracks marking where your journey began. A breeze, faint to the instruments, stirs the dust ever so slightly, but you cannot feel it through your suit. You only see the particles rise like mist in the distance, a gentle curtain catching the sunlight. The air does not rush or whistle, it simply allows the dust to float, to hover, then to settle. There will be storms, yes, where these particles fill the sky, blot the sun, and turn this red horizon into haze. But they are not here now. Right now the sky is clear, glowing in shades of muted pink, dim but calming above the barren plain. Higher up it deepens into butterscotch tint, until finally along the horizon it takes on blue, a horizon unlike any remembered at home. This is your sky now, and this dusty surface beneath your boots is your ground. The feeling is neither harsh nor lonesome anymore. It is simple, steady, and patient. Each step, not rushed, not heavy, becomes an exercise in attention. The crunch is a reminder of presence, the iron-red hue a reminder of the forces that shape this world into what it is. You no longer compare it to Earth, but recognize it as something entire, complete in its own right. It is a world that holds you gently in its lower pull, offering you space to walk without burden. The thought occurs that every breath you draw in your suit, every motion you now make, is stitched against the silence of a planet that does not resist. The calm within this strangeness becomes stronger with each moment you remain here. As you finally pause, looking back at the vessel that carried you here, and forward at the rugged land waiting beyond, you step once more, sensing that this surface, though foreign, is beginning to accept the rhythm of your body. What felt overwhelming at first has settled. You find yourself calmer, quieter, as though this moment is less a challenge and more a welcome. With each footprint pressing a story into the regolith, you feel ready to shape more than steps. Soon, you know, this beginning will extend into building something lasting under this silent sky. Your first shelter, a place to call home among the dust. Before you set out to walk under Mars's sky, a question lingers in your mind. Where will you rest when the sun begins to sink? The red surface is unwelcoming to the human body. There is no breathable air outside, and the atmosphere is so thin that it cannot hold warmth once the light fades. As the horizon stretches into distance, littered with iron-rich dust dunes and scattered stones, the stillness makes one truth clear. You need a place to stay that is safe. Shelter first, exploration later. Tonight, that is your simple task, to create a home where none yet exists. The vessel that brought you here sits motionless on the plain, its landing legs pressed into the regolith. Around it, containers filled with essential equipment wait in silence. Each one holds parts to assemble into something more than protection, a foundation for living, working, and waking each Martian morning without fear of the cold, thin air. When you pick up the first container, its weight is far lighter than what you would expect on Earth. Even though the crate is heavy, reduced Martian gravity allows you to move it with less strain, though it still requires deliberate effort. You set it near the lander and pause. Around you, nothing breathes. The world outside is cold, dry, and hushed. But inside your helmet, you hear the steady flow of your air and the whisper of your suit fans keeping you alive. The first step in building your base is laying out the habitat unit. The module sits folded like an unopened package, light enough to carry here, but designed to expand into a much larger space when activated. You unseal clamps, and the fabric structure begins to loosen. The material does not look like the walls of a house, but strong composite layers designed to resist tears, hold pressure, and trap heat. Slowly, you connect a power line from your lander and open the valve to start inflating the habitat. Almost at once, the faint hiss of compressed gas fills your ears through the comlink, and the fabric begins to rise. What once looked like a flat, rolled bundle now grows taller, its sides pushing out until it shapes into a dome. Every sound during this process stands out. The click of metal latches as you anchor the corners into drilled holes in the regolith. The slight metallic vibration as clamps lock into place. The background hum that starts when fans switch on, circulating air into what will soon be your living zone. Outside, the world remains absolutely silent, absorbing no noise, producing none in return. The contrast is sharp. Tools ring faintly in your gloves through the suit, but beyond that, the planet answers with nothing. You begin to picture what life will feel like inside these walls, separated only by fabric, yet secure enough to hold your weight of breath against a place where no breath exists. The thin atmosphere around you explains why this process matters. Mars's sky is only about 1% as dense as Earth's at the surface. What seems like air is nearly a vacuum with too little pressure to allow liquid water or human lungs to survive. Your shelter has to hold an environment where pressure is stable, so blood runs in veins as it should, lungs expand naturally, and equipment behaves properly. Controlling heat is just as crucial. During the day, sunlight may warm the ground a little, but as soon as it sets, temperatures plunge far below freezing. To live here, you need more than walls. You need a complete micro-world inside. Modules provide that layer, an atmosphere, a climate, a home suspended within alien air. After securing the dome, you move to connecting support systems. Each container holds another part: power couplers, oxygen tanks, heat radiators. You lock cables from solar panels into sockets, the connectors clicking softly as current flows. A small hum rises as batteries begin charging. Pumps engage, pushing oxygen indoors, carrying warmth through thin tubing in the walls. Outside, these movements look mechanical and plain. Inside, they hold meaning, every system intertwined, each step moving you closer to the moment when you can walk in without a suit, touch the air with bare skin, and trust that it will support you. You pause again and look around. The planet is immense, but your actions are small stitches in its surface, a cluster of modules linked by corridors, forming not only shelter, but flexibility. They can be expanded, reassembled, or joined with future units to build larger living areas. This modular design is critical. No base here can be permanent if rigid. Conditions change, storms erode, and missions require adaptation. Each new arrival can attach to what you have built, the habitat growing like a settlement in stages. Even now, as you align connection ports, you imagine what it would look like in the years ahead. Corridors spreading across the plain, labs added, storage chambers buried under protective dust. A small village under a foreign sky. Shielding is required as well. Mars offers little to stop cosmic rays and solar particles. On Earth, a thick atmosphere and magnetic field deflect radiation that arrives from space. Here, those protections are missing. To create safety, engineers designed a way to use the surface itself. The loose regolith will eventually be piled over the top of the shelters, covering them with a blanket of soil thick enough to reduce exposure. For tonight, you have not yet covered the module, but the plan is there. In time, the same dusty minerals that stain your boots will form walls and ceilings, turning what you now inflate from a temporary home into something sustainable over many nights. You continue the setup, attaching more cargo units, aligning docking locks, and testing software linked to the life support controls. Each sensor reports incremental rises in oxygen levels, stable internal pressure, and slow increases in temperature. The readings confirm that the miniature atmosphere inside is strengthening. You watch the numbers change line by line on your wrist display, waiting as the balance reaches the safe range for human lungs. When green indicators flash, you understand what they mean. Not simply that equipment works, but that this is now a place where you can be without armor between you and air. The anticipation runs quietly through you as you approach the habitat entrance. The door mechanism is simple, a circular frame with a flexible seal that opens into an airlock chamber. You enter, close the outer hatch, and wait as pumps adjust pressure. A brief hiss surrounds you as air flows in, equalizing both sides. Then the indicator light changes, and you push the inner curtain aside. For the first time since you stepped onto Mars, you remove the helmet from your head. The air is warm enough, rich in oxygen, pressure steady, silent except for a low background hum. You stay still, taking in that hum. It is soft and regular, like the sound of a distant machine always working. It replaces the quiet of the planet outside with something equally steady yet deeply comforting. In this dome you are alone still, but protected. The walls, though thin, form a boundary so meaningful it feels stronger than stone. You reach out, touch the fabric wall with your hand, and it presses back, not with solid weight, but with gentle firmness, strained by inner air. This is no longer just equipment. It is shelter, a room, a space where you will eat, rest, think, and dream, while all around the red desert stretches cold. Moving to the center, you picture the routine ahead, food packets attached to heating units, places where equipment will be set, a sleep platform near the wall. Everything simple, everything designed for function, but layered. These elements resemble what home feels like. You breathe with ease, letting out tension that has been carried since the lander touched down. You are here, and for the first time, you are settled. Outside, the plane remains empty. The dust lies quiet, the wind thin. But inside you hear life systems humming, and that sound marks the beginning of presence. Tomorrow you will step out again, wander beneath colors in the sky that shift each hour, and face mountains taller than any at home. For tonight, though, you have what you need, a place to be. With safety held by fabric, air thickened by careful machines, you lie back against a surface that supports you. Outside, the world stretches in endless silence. Inside, you rest calm, knowing that from shelter, you can begin exploring landscapes that wait just beyond your door. When you step outside the shelter and lift your gaze upward, the sky above reveals itself in tones unlike anything remembered from Earth. It is not a sweeping blue dome pushed deep by atmosphere, nor is it heavy with layered clouds. Instead, it hangs softly, muted, its light pulled through dust that has circled in the air for endless millennia. What appears first is a kind of pale red, a pink gently stretched across the horizon, blending seamlessly with the land below, so that ground and sky almost share one continuous hue. You stand between them, trying to separate the lines, and realize there is no clear border, not in the way you once knew, on a world where air carried color more vividly. As you walk, the light lowers over your shoulders, revealing new shades folded into the atmosphere. Pinks hover near the horizon, while higher up the tones warm into butterscotch, a mild golden tint that filters sunlight into a calm and steady glow. The dust suspended in the thin air pulls at the light, bending it, scattering every beam in ways that reshape the color palette entirely. Unlike nitrogen and oxygen that scatter blue light strongly back on Earth, the particles here are larger, heavier, and they push the redder tones forward, painting the day in hues from pale salmon to dusky bronze. Each step away from the base brings a widening view, until the dome behind you is framed under a sky that could not belong to any other world. The sensation is quiet, but precise. You feel the air is thin, too thin to sense as a breeze, too weak to push against your body, yet it marks itself in vision. Suspended grains of iron-rich dust catch the sun, scattering it in every direction, creating this softened landscape-long canopy. Squinting through your visor, you catch places where brightness shifts, a gradient of rose light deepening near the zenith before fading again into muted ochre at the edges of your vision. It is not just one color stretched flat, but a spectrum in constant transition, shaped by the angle of the sun and the fine particles hanging nearly weightless in the atmosphere above. Walking beneath this sky, you notice how every shadow thrown onto the ground is tinged with red. Even the white framework of your suit takes on a blush from the hues above, reflecting down onto material that was once stark and bright. The terrain joins in, rocks, dust, cliffs in the far distance, all bathed in the same filtered palette, so that nothing stands alone, every object painted in the same softened light. The feeling is different than Earth daylight, which tends to sharpen edges, distinguishing green leaves from blue skies. Here, boundaries blur, stitched together by the pink tones that wash everything into a singular visual field. As you tilt your head farther back, the higher sky reveals faint streaks of dusty brightness, striations where currents have lifted and clustered particulates at certain altitudes. They form soft bands, pale against the surrounding colors, as though the air itself held brushstrokes in suspension. Beyond those layers, the sky fades into hues less familiar. With the sun slightly lowered now, edges begin catching bluish tones, subtle but visible, appearing most strongly near the horizon as the day moves toward evening. You realize this inversion belongs to Mars alone. While Earth's sunsets glow in orange and red, here it is the cooler shades that emerge as daylight dwindles, a product of light scattering differently within the thin atmosphere, filled with fine dust at just the right angle. The thought rests in your mind as you continue slowly across the regolith. The phenomenon is not dramatic, but rather soft and gradual. As each step alters your perspective, the dome of the sky adjusts its balance of color. Pink continues to dominate, but next to the sun, a faint halo gathers, shifting into pale blue as the star dips. The science is clear. Fine particles scatter light, distributing hues unevenly. But standing beneath it, the effect does not arrive to your eyes as analysis. It arrives as calm. Every slight change in tint carries with it not urgency, but quiet reassurance, like a slow rhythm repeating itself without end. You pause, lifting your visor toward the horizon. The sun, smaller than you remember, glows faintly through the dust, not blazing but subdued, its power softened to a disk that seems further away than it should. Around it the colors quietly reverse themselves. Directly by its edge sits a faint bluish-gray tinge, a halo countering the reds that blanket the rest of the sky. This reversal looks unreal to eyes trained on Earth sunsets. But here, in the silence of a Martian plain, it delivers a kind of tranquility. It is unfamiliar and at the same time reassuring, as though reminding you that even within contrast, there is balance. The land beneath this twilight responds in kind. Shadows lengthen dramatically, stretching far across the surface due to the lower angle of distant light. Each rock throws a streak of shade many times its length, soft at the edges, blurred by dust still afloat. You trace these lines with your eyes as they spread outward, realigning your orientation until it feels as if the land itself is softly breathing with the falling of the day. Your own body feels lighter still, not only from the reduced force of gravity, but from the impression given by the light above. The sky conveys no haste, no demand, only the patient surrender of day into evening. You find yourself slowing, sinking each step with the gradual transition. A rhythm builds between your breath, the crunch beneath your boots, and the sliding tones overhead. What could have felt foreign settles instead into comfort, the blending of dust, sun, and thin air, turning the alien into something gentle. You notice your reflections shifting with the sky as well. The visor of your helmet mirrors the pale pink, an overlay across your face that makes you appear part of this landscape rather than apart from it. The dust stirred by your movements lingers a moment longer than expected before returning to rest, as though caught in solidarity with the softly weighted atmosphere above. Together, these details weave a sense of belonging, however temporary, to this changing Martian canvas. As twilight deepens, the butterscotch tones from earlier in the day sink away, leaving dimmer, cooler variations. The faint blue near the setting sun grows more pronounced for minutes at a time, while the rest of the sky softens into purples mixed with the persistent red sheen. The transition does not carry drama, it is not sudden. Instead, it feels like slowly dimming lanterns in a vast chamber, each shade released one level at a time until only the smallest glow remains. Your shoulders relax under the effect, your mind drifting between thought and calm perception. In this state, Mars's sky becomes not distant but intimate. Every particle shaping the view is suspended close, just overhead, scattering light quietly into your line of sight. The thin veil of dust has created for you a ceiling, wide and infinite in reach, but touched with softness that draws your gaze again and again. This veil transforms what might have been cold emptiness into a sanctuary overhead, one that holds you in its colors as though they were blankets unfolding across the curve of the horizon. And so the day yields, not with flourish, but with gradual persistence, tones sliding toward night while silence remains absolute. You absorb it, the progression of pink to blue to violet, the atmosphere so delicate it seems that a sustained breath could alter it. Yet it endures, steady, practiced, ancient. You feel small in proportion to this sequence, but also comforted by its consistency. Day will always stretch into twilight, and twilight will always fold into night, even on a world that seems so separate from home. As the last remaining glow fades above the horizon, your eyes are drawn forward toward the outline that catches the dying light. In the distance rises an immense shape, casting its own shadow against the sky. Taller than any mountain you have known, broader even in silhouette than ranges on earth, it rises against the faintly colored air with a quiet authority. Though miles away, its presence commands the horizon. You recognize it already. The sky that guided you through calm has led your gaze to the rise of Olympus Mons, waiting ahead. What does it feel like to stand before the tallest volcano in the solar system? The thought enters slowly as you approach the horizon, where a shape begins to dominate the landscape in a way you have not yet experienced anywhere on this planet. Olympus Mons rises not like a peak that pierces the air with sharp angles, but as a force that seems to extend beyond the limits of vision. Each step forward makes its slopes grow no closer to narrowing, for they are immense and shallow, sweeping so wide that your eyes cannot trace the full edge at once. The experience challenges your sense of perspective. This is not simply a mountain, but a feature of the entire world itself, sculpted across ages into an expanse that dwarfs every landmark you have ever known. The journey toward it begins at the edge of the plain. Dust shifts in subtle arcs over the regolith as gravity binds it faintly to the surface, too thin to stir in wind, but always present, coating each step you take. The air remains silent, the sky painted still in muted reds and butterscotch tints that hang above the low horizon. Yet a contrast begins to show the closer you move to the great volcano. Its base spreads wide, so broad that it can be compared to the area of entire regions on Earth. A footprint so massive it seems to extend toward every corner of the compass. The slopes themselves are not steep. They appear almost flat in angle, tapering with such gradual incline that from a distance your eyes struggle to decide where the plain ends and the mountain begins. The scale resists understanding, as though your mind cannot shape it into something familiar. Everest, the tallest point back on Earth, stood in stories as a challenge to any climber, a summit difficult to reach for even the strongest mountaineer. Olympus Mons, by contrast, is nearly 3 times taller in vertical measurement, rising more than 20 kilometers from the base to the summit rim. Yet, unlike the razor cliffs of Earth's ranges, here the profile spreads flat and wide, a shield created by lava pouring gradually in eruption after eruption, each flow traveling great distances carried by the lower pull of gravity. Instead of rock mass stacked tightly upward, it is a layer spread across the surface, repeated over geological time until it became this world-shaping structure. Dust gathers at the base, a loose collar formed from billions of years of erosion from the summit and slopes. The loose grains scatter under the weight of your boots, coating the soles before releasing into fine arcs that rise slower in the low gravity and settle gently around you. From this vantage point, The volcano does not rise with sudden drama, but with a broad authority. Shadows stretch along its outer edge, drawn out by the distant sun, casting long, dark lines across the plain. Time itself feels caught within those shadows, as though light has been climbing and retreating across these surfaces for billions of years, unbroken but patient in its repetition. Walking closer, you see more detail. The lower slopes reveal channels of hardened lava, flows that once spread in wide sheets across the plain, cooling into plateaus and ridges as they hardened. Some flows show fractures, deep grooves cut by the contraction of rock as it cooled in thin Martian air. Others resemble frozen rivers, broad swaths of basalt, hardened in place, rippling toward the horizon with patterns that echo movement long since stilled. These surfaces remind you that Olympus Mons is not ancient in every part. Many of its flows, some researchers suggest, hardened within the last few million years, an age recent enough to consider it active, even within the scale of planetary history. Here, what feels silent and forgotten may yet carry the memory of fire moving beneath the crust not long ago. The sense of age and size weighs upon you differently than when standing before mountains on Earth. There, soft erosion from rain and wind shapes cliffs and valleys with sharp edges. Here, without heavy atmosphere or running water to carve features rapidly, the slopes remain smoother, longer lasting, less weathered. The mountain looks untouched, preserved not by gentleness, but by absence. Time acts slowly in this thin air, allowing textures to remain where they formed. To your eyes, each ridge and wave of hardened lava reads like a permanent record, as if the planet kept careful notes in stone, preserving the memory of eruptions long past. You pause to rest and look up once more. The summit is invisible from here, hidden by the curve of the gentle slope. Though the peak ascends far above the surrounding plain, the shallow incline hides its upper border. This is a feature not of abrupt height, but of enormous width, a mountain that takes even the horizon itself into its body. You imagine traveling upward across these gradual inclines, and it is clear why climbing Olympus Mons would not resemble earthly mountaineering. One could walk for days, weeks even, ascending at such a gentle angle that it might feel like crossing a plateau rather than scaling a mountain. Only after lengthy travel would the summit rim begin to appear, marked not by a sharp peak, but by the edge of a great caldera that crowns the volcano's roof. The atmosphere here is still. The silence continues, more pronounced under the shadow of this giant. Already you feel that the mountain exerts not force, but presence. It seems less like an obstacle, and more like a sentinel, standing quietly above the Martian surface, watching as dust storms pass, as days shorten into nights, as eons stretch into eons again. Its immense size suggests inevitability, as though it has always been here, part of the core identity of the planet itself. Mars without Olympus Mons is almost unthinkable. The volcano defines the planet as much as the color of the dust or the thinness of the air. You let the thought settle. This world has shaped conditions for Olympus Mons to grow differently than any peak on Earth. The lower gravity let the lava travel farther, spreading wide sheets that built gradually over billions of years. Without tectonic plates shifting underneath, the volcanic hotspot remained fixed, feeding eruption after eruption into one place rather than being distributed along ranges. The result is a creation that is singular, unmatched, impossible to replicate elsewhere. It stands as proof of how environment sculpts scale, how forces invisible to the eye shape entire worlds through time. The shadows on its slopes lengthen as the sun drifts lower. They fall across ridges and depressions, tracing every contour with dark outlines in sharp relief. The vast cliff edges near the top remain unseen, but you sense them, ancient scarps circling the caldera that formed after volumes of lava drained away, collapsing the summit into a cavity large enough to swallow cities whole. Though hidden from view, that summit structure presides like an idea above you, drawing your imagination upward as though you could feel the weight of it pressing into the sky. This sensation, both awe and calm, deepens as you continue to stand at its base. You are not threatened. There is no danger pressing down from this silent giant. What you feel instead is guardianship. The volcano watches, patient and unmoving, carrying ages of history in its slopes. It is a reminder that worlds grow differently in silence, that the absence of life in a landscape does not strip it of meaning, but imbues it with endurance. Standing here, you are wrapped in scale that goes beyond human measurement. The enormity does not crush, it steadies, giving you perspective that is humbling but also comforting. You turn slowly as you begin to leave the base behind, footsteps pressing once more into the dust. The mountain remains in your line of sight, receding only gradually as you shift direction. Though you walk away from it, the sense of its size does not shrink. It remains in your awareness, like a distant horizon that rests always present, a steady figure watching as you continue onward. Its guardianship stretches farther than its slopes, long shadows guiding your motion. And there, beyond its reach, another sight draws you. The land ahead splits open, not in slopes that rise, but in cliffs that fall. It is the edge of Valles Marineris, a canyon so broad and long that it makes even the might of Olympus Mons seem like one part of a much larger story. From the stillness of a volcano's base, your steps now lead toward a chasm of unmatched depth, where silence itself may carry yet another form. Imagine standing before a canyon so wide and so long that it makes the Grand Canyon on Earth look like a narrow valley by comparison. You walk slowly across a flat stretch of regolith, the ground firm beneath your boots, until the land begins to slope downward into something you cannot yet fully see. The step you take feels no different than those before it, but the horizon changes. The plain does not end as normal terrain. Instead, the ground ahead cuts away as though a piece of the planet has been removed. You continue forward, cautious but calm, until you stand at the edge, and the view before you stretches farther than any space your eyes have known. The rim is silent. The air, as always on Mars, carries no sound. Dust drifts faintly, caught in the thin atmosphere, but the scene itself remains still. From your position, the canyon seems to run endlessly in either direction, so long that it feels as though it circles the planet. The scale is difficult to measure by eye, yet instruments confirm what you sense almost instinctively. The canyon system reaches around 4,000 kilometers from end to end, spans as much as 200 kilometers across, and in places drops to depths of 7 kilometers. The statistics are numbers, But the reality is this vision before you, a rift so large that it covers 1/5 of the total circumference of Mars. Standing here, you are small across a trench carved over geological timescales into the surface of the planet. The edge is sharp but stable underfoot. You approach carefully, aware that your footsteps press only lightly into the dust at the cliff. Gravity grants steadiness, but the sight over the edge remains immense. Below you, shadows pool at the base, darker than the soil around you, since sunlight reaches the floor at steep angles and disperses faintly through the dust. As you watch, the shadow stretches further as the sun lowers in the west, emphasizing how far the land drops away. It is not a single descent, but a stair-step of cliffs, slopes, and rifted walls, each one leading down into further depth. The scale overwhelms ordinary perception, yet it does not press against you with fear. Instead, the emptiness steadies you, drawing your gaze into open distance that feels both untouchable and secure. The origins of this canyon add another layer to the experience. Unlike valleys on Earth that form from rivers over long passages of time, this great chasm likely emerged from the crust itself, shifting and breaking. Some theories suggest the crust of Mars fractured as the planet cooled, creating great rift zones that stretched outward. Others propose that subsurface magma pushed upward, disturbing the overlying bedrock until it collapsed inward, leaving behind long chasms linked together into one massive system. Later, wind erosion and smaller collapses altered the pathways, broadening the shapes and smoothing some walls. The result is this enormous scar in the surface, preserved almost intact because Mars lacks plate tectonics like Earth. It is a monument to forces hidden far below, displayed on a scale visible across any map of the planet. Looking down from the rim, you notice textures in the layers. Nearer edges show bands of rock exposed, slicing across the canyon walls in horizontal lines. Each band marks a period when lava solidified or when crustal material cooled, preserved now as strata along the cliffs. In some areas, ridges and buttresses protrude, catching sunlight and reflecting it in pale colors. The floor, though dim, holds braided ridges and dune-like shapes sculpted by ancient winds. From this height, the details blur together into patterns, as though the canyon itself is a canvas of repeating lines and shaded symmetry. The act of viewing such enormity brings with it an odd calm. Your body registers no danger. The surface beneath your boots is solid. The walls extend outward so far that you do not perceive the sheer drop-off as threatening. Instead, your eyes travel into distance, tracing the far rim, a thin ribbon dividing sky and abyss. That line continues past your ability to focus, curving with the planet's roundness. For a long moment, you let your vision lose itself to that stretch, recognizing no endpoint, only the quiet continuation of a landform that surpasses familiar scale. The canyon's vastness forms not a void of uncertainty, but a presence of stability. From this vantage, it appears eternal. The light plays a vital role in the experience. As the Martian sun sinks lower, rays cut across the canyon, striking ridges at sharp angles. Where walls face the sun, faint orange tones glisten, matching the dust above. Where walls turn away, shadow falls quickly, painting surfaces in dark bands that descend further into the depths. Each shadow and flare of light exaggerates the contours, marking structural lines that otherwise remain hidden at midday. You watch as deeper shadows merge together into one pool at the base, while faint ridges glow near the rim. This slow rhythm of light and darkness hypnotizes the eye, reducing the canyon's immensity to a simple cycle of brightness and void, turning incomprehensible scale into manageable pieces of vision. You step back slightly, turning to look along the rim in both directions. The canyon stretches without discernible end. To the east it fades into the haze of atmospheric dust, vanishing at distances beyond sight. To the west the land drops again and again, ruptures connected into linked valleys and side canyons. No single viewpoint can capture its full geometry. To comprehend it, you would need to travel along its rim for months, mapping each tributary, crossing the lines drawn in stone, and yet from here you glimpse enough to understand. This one edge carries in it the weight of the whole, evidence of planet-sized forces preserved under alien skies. Despite the emptiness of sound, your own awareness sharpens. You hear the uniform tone of your suit systems, keeping you supplied with air. You hear the shifting of your own breath, steady and slow, mirroring the stillness before you. In the absence of any external noise, those rhythms dominate, blending with the canyon's silence. It creates the illusion that the canyon itself breathes, that the great expanse carries a pulse, not in air or water, but in your presence as an observer tuned to its scale. The effect is grounding, pulling your thoughts into a pattern that repeats with the same quiet persistence as the shadows crossing the stone below. You imagine what it would be like to travel down into the chasm. The descent would not be accomplished with a single climb. The walls are vast, formed of multiple tiers that cut into each other. It might take weeks of traversing slopes and shelves to reach the canyon floor. There you would find landscapes of dunes shaped by winds, fields of fractured rock, perhaps evidence of landslides in the past. Some believe that water ice once flowed through parts of Valles Marineris, leaving behind erosional features on side walls. If so, these signs are a reminder that Mars once held conditions unlike those seen now, and this canyon retains traces of that story in its shape. Yet tonight, you do not move downward. You remain at the rim, accepting the canyon as it is from this place. The immensity does not call you into it, but rather holds you steady above it. The horizon, the light, the uninterrupted stillness all combine into an experience that is meditative rather than dramatic. Where others might see emptiness, you see stability stretched into distance. Where others might imagine isolation, you recognize calm. The canyon does not press urgency upon you. It allows you to stand at its edge, breathe, and align your thoughts with silence wider than oceans. As the final slant of sunlight dips, the bottom of the canyon becomes a full shadow, no longer showing individual shapes. The upper rims retain faint light for a moment longer, glowing against a sky that begins to shift toward dusk. Those ridges shine with pale amber before sinking finally into dimness. You witness that sequence in stillness, aware that it repeats every Martian day without pause or disruption. The canyon has seen countless such sunsets, and it will see countless more long after you leave. The scale of time matches the scale of distance here, measured in millions and billions, not days. and so you pull your gaze from the distance and find the silence wrapping you firmly. Standing at the rim of Valles Marineris does not lift you into fear, but lowers you into calm. The canyon is vast, but its vastness surrounds without harm, a constant reminder of the stability of matter and the patience of geological time. The abyss does not consume, it steadies. It becomes a partner in reflection, a chamber for thought that extends past visible limits. The longer you stand, the more that steadiness infuses your awareness, until standing at the edge becomes as tranquil as lying on a still plain. When you finally turn away, the canyon remains at your back with the permanence of a world-defining feature. The vastness lingers in your mind as you step again across the dust above, carrying with you the scale of what you have just seen. Night approaches. Shadows already lengthen across the plain, and the faint pink sky above begins to soften. You move forward, leaving behind the grandeur of landscapes carved in stone and stepping into the intimate sphere of Martian nights, where silence deepens not across kilometers, but within the walls of your shelter. What happens when the horizon of Mars begins to blur, not from twilight, but from a wall of dust pushing slowly forward? At first you see only a faint haze in the distance, a light band where the pink-tinged sky becomes dimmer, as though the air itself thickens. You retreat calmly toward your base, each step pressing into the regolith without hurry. The storm approaches without sound at first. Only the steady silence of the planet accompanies you until you reach the shelter's entrance. With practiced movements, you cycle through the airlock and close the outer door, the seals pulling tight. Inside, the hum of life support greets you again, steady and stable. This is the refuge where you will watch the storm unfold. Through the small reinforced window, the field outside begins to fade. What was once a sharp outline of dust and scattered stone now softens as though the ground itself blends with the air. The thin Martian atmosphere cannot carry pressure the way Earth's winds do, yet it can move fine particles across the land in sheets that engulf sight. These grains are small, far finer than earthly sands or dust, each one clinging lightly to neighbors through electrostatic charge. As the storm nears, loose grains rise and hover. They do not race past like raindrops or sand in a desert gale. They remain suspended, held aloft by currents wider and steadier than you expected. The landscape becomes muted, colors drained, until only dim tones remain through the haze. Inside the shelter, sensation changes. At first, silence continues, but then a new pattern arrives, soft knocks against the outer shell. They are not sharp strikes, but faint rattles as airborne particles tap against the walls. The sound is gentle compared to any storm you once heard on Earth. The long whistle of gales, the crash of branches, the clattering debris are absent here. Instead, the thin air reduces pressure, compressing sound into muffled tones. The effect is quiet, like rain muffled by thick walls, except no drops fall. Only dust touches you, far more lightly, but spread across everything outside in constant measure. Listeners would describe the noise not as loud but as steady, a rhythm forming on the surface of metal panels and flexible fabric walls. The storm now thickens outside. Light dims further, and the faint sun weakens until only a pale glow marks its position in the sky. Shadows vanish. Every surface is colored by the same rust-hued mist, and distance collapses. What stood on the plain, stones, ridges, equipment crates, fades into sameness until only outlines remain. Dust coats every visible surface. Tiny grains cling stubbornly to solar panels, suit fabric, and equipment casings. They stay attached even against low gravity, not from weight, but from fine static charges holding them fast. This settling occurs over every piece of gear, a reminder of how persistent these particles are and why storms of such scale challenge long-term survival on the planet. You imagine being outside during the storm, though you are not. The pressure of the atmosphere would make the wind weak against your body compared to earthly gusts. It could not push you down or pull objects violently through the air. Instead, what you would find most difficult would be sight itself. The world would narrow to a few meters. Sunlight cut away, surroundings turned into diffuse shades of brown and orange. Within that envelope, time would slow, movements judged carefully, guided mostly by instruments. Your suit would pick up the same static charge as dust, particles clinging stubbornly to every panel, visor, and seam. Work would grow harder, not because of force, but because of vision and coating, layers of particles invading every piece of equipment. Inside the habitat, you feel none of that difficulty. Instead, the storm becomes an experience filtered by protective walls. The rattling persists, light but unending, each tap folding into the next, until the rhythm is familiar. The hum of circulation fans blends with it, creating a chorus both artificial and natural, machine and atmosphere combining. Rather than sharp gusts, the sound remains constant, a droning backdrop that calms your senses. You stretch out on the rest frame, letting your body register that no threat has entered. The storm is contained outside. Inside, you are enclosed in stable air, warm enough for comfort, safe from infiltration. Through the small window, the muted view extends. You notice the pace of drifting dust particles, slower than snow or falling rain might appear on Earth. Each mote ascends and descends almost lazily, carried by currents larger than themselves. The scale impresses itself again. This one storm is part of a system that can grow large enough to wrap the globe. Entire hemispheres can fall into shadow under storms like these, sunlight dimming across continents at once. They can last for weeks, sometimes months, blanketing Mars so fully that from space no clear surface is visible. What you see through your narrow window is only one fraction of that greater movement, a piece of a planet-wide rhythm that repeats many times in cycles of climate. Sitting quietly inside, you absorb another sensory note. Your ears hear only softened rattles and whirs, but your skin notices faint tremors through the walls. They come as light vibrations, almost imperceptible, a reminder that currents outside are moving steadily, exerting themselves against the habitat. They are not violent shakes. They are background tremors, muted by layers of material, arriving like pulses against your frame. These faint touches do not bring worry. They bring awareness. They tell you the world is active, shaping its environment through wind, even in a place with such limited air. For Earth, storms bring noise and threat, often severe. On Mars, storms bring quiet color, filtered noise, and altered light. Their pressure is manageable, their sound subdued, their action more about covering and dimming than toppling and tearing apart. Knowing this changes your perspective. You had once prepared for harsh conditions, imagining violent gales that batter walls. Instead, you encounter not force, but persistence. Dust storms do not roar, they linger. They change your days by limiting light, by obscuring view, by layering fine particles across everything. But inside your shelter, those outside changes transform themselves into calming signs, a lullaby carried in vibrations and rattles, tones repeated softly, endlessly, with no breaks. You allow your thoughts to slow with the cadence. Each sequence of taps on the wall pairs with your breath, an unplanned rhythm that eases you into a slower pace. The mind pictures the air outside filling with particles, moving in streams across ridges, curving over slopes, saturating valleys with suspended red mists. None of it intrudes here. You are untouched by force, listening only to its muted echo. The storm becomes less an obstacle and more a companion. It exists as reminder of the planet's atmosphere, thin though it is, still alive enough to stir into motion, still expressive, still capable of forming patterns wrapped across the entire globe. Time passes like this, light dim outside, inner space quiet, storm persisting without end. At length, you begin to notice subtle change. The rattling slows in intensity. The muted daylight beyond shifts from deep brown toward lighter haze. Particles thin in the air, falling gently again to the ground, adhering to every exposed surface. Slowly, slopes reappear where only fog had been. Outlines sharpen. The storm does not stop dramatically, but it subsides like a tide retreating, a slow reversal until calm is complete once again. You watch through the window as distances return, colors brighten slightly, and the plain stretches farther again into sight. Inside your shelter, sound also shifts. The rattles cease, leaving only the fan hum behind. Silence blossoms once again, wrapping the habitat in stillness. What remains is not emptiness, but the comfort of contrast. Storm rhythm has given way to quiet, and that quiet feels richer now, more grounding, more noticeable. You recognize how safety is built not only in equipment, but in acceptance. Acceptance that this planet will raise storms of dust again and again, yet none will breach this dwelling. The experience deepens calm, affirming the security of your retreat. Far from being reminders of danger, storms transform into reminders of endurance, a partnership between human design and planetary pattern. With daylight fading outside after the storm, your awareness turns inward once more. The horizon darkens, the sky settling into hues of evening, light trailing away into deeper silence. Beyond the rattles gone, a new stillness prepares itself for night. Each sequence flows into the next. Dust storm, quiet, then the long stretch of Martian evening unfolding. You allow the transition to happen naturally, your body relaxing in step with the receding noise. Night falls gently after storm, bringing with it the next moment to experience, the silent stillness that only Martian nights can hold. What does silence sound like on Mars after the storm has passed? It begins as an absence, a gap left behind when the tapping of dust fades and the faint rattles on the habitat walls stop. At first, the stillness is shocking in its totality. Nothing moves outside, nothing breathes, Nothing stirs. Yet within this absence, another presence slowly grows clear. The night itself seems to extend out forever, vast and unbroken, and from your vantage within the shelter, you feel its scale pressing softly inward. You sit in the warmth of the base, but only a few thin layers of synthetic fabric and rigid panels stand between you and cold so deep it freezes steel, air so thin it carries almost no sound. The contrast heightens your perception. Silence here does not mean nothing. It means everything is stripped back to its core. The storm left no trace of sound, but what remains is the cold. Without the sun's rays to maintain warmth, the land outside cools quickly. Mars lacks heavy air to keep heat close to the ground, so as daylight fades, energy escapes into space almost instantly. Temperatures fall in staggering drops. At the equator, you may know warmth near 70 degrees Fahrenheit when sunlight strikes directly. Hours later, once the light vanishes, the ground releases that warmth, and the thermometer plummets. By midnight, it can reach levels close to -100 or even colder across open plains. It is a chill that far surpasses even the worst polar nights on Earth. Yet here inside your habitat, heaters regulate with steady hums, pumps circulate air warmed by fine coils, and you feel no bite to the skin. The contrast allows you to observe the night without submitting to its extremes. You remain a visitor, present but sheltered. Looking outward, the darkness itself takes on a form. On Earth, night skies glow with scattered blue light, traced by moisture, dust, and atmosphere, bending brightness across horizons. Cities smear the view with haze. Clouds glow against human lamps. But here, with only 1% of Earth's sea level pressure, no such scattering occurs. Light does not cling to a sky, it leaves space unobstructed. As a result, once the sun has vanished, blackness spreads without interruption, deeper and clearer than anything familiar. Distant starlight reaches you almost pure, unbent, unmuted. When you look up, more stars appear than you have ever known with naked eyes before. They cover the dome of the sky, pinpoints bright and sharp, as though set against a polished surface. The Milky Way unfurls across the horizon in dense clusters, not a faint haze, but a structure of countless sparks. Mars offers no barrier to sight, no curtain to soften the cosmos. Before turning your gaze outward, however, you notice how the interior space continues to define itself through sound and vibration. The quiet outside exaggerates what happens within these walls. You hear machines more acutely, the whir of circulation fans, the faint clicking of thermal switches, the rhythmic rush of oxygen through narrow pipes. These recurring sounds begin to form a pattern. They echo not loudly but steadily, a repetition that mimics something biological. As you sit or lie back on a rest frame, the hum aligns itself with your breathing, pumps, cycle, your chest expands. A fan starts its rotation. Silence deepens behind it all, leaving those small mechanical voices highlighted. The experience mimics life itself, like hearing a constant heartbeat, steady, functional, ongoing. This rhythm comforts you. It is both reminder and assurance that systems operate without pause to preserve the small world of air around you. Stillness on this level emphasizes isolation. Beyond the walls, an entire planet remains empty of voices, rivers, or forests. There is no conversation, No marks of other animals to stir sound, no signs of city life. The only mind awake here is your own. That recognition can bring loneliness. Thoughts drift to earth, far beyond the reach of immediate communication, a place filled with millions of movements every moment. You picture sounds you once knew, a train passing in the distance, waves folding against a shore, faint human voices carried on wind. None of those arrive here. Mars absorbs noise into itself, compressing the concept of sound into short-lived vibrations that vanish quickly. Loneliness could grow heavy under that condition. Yet something happens as you continue to sit within it. The sense of absence transforms into its counterpart. Instead of feeling hollow, the silence becomes oriented, giving your mind open space to slow down, to rest without interruption, to measure breath against calm. The immensity of night above deepens the effect. You tilt your head back, pressing against the seat, and let sight climb into the sky. With no scattering atmosphere, nothing hinders your eyes. Each star appears crisp. Some shine with subtle color, blue, yellow, red, distinctions visible to a naked pupil under conditions so clear. Planets stand out easily, quiet points that refuse to flicker in the vacuum. The motion of Earth's night sky, constant yet drowned in haze, becomes obvious here. You pick up slow arcs of constellations crossing with clarity. Nebulae appear faint but undeniable. Wisps that were once reserved to telescopes now drawn faintly across black. The effect is not dazzling but humbling. For the first time you realize what it means to see the sky without filter. There is no buffer between planet and cosmos. Above you lies not an overhead view but an open field, unbroken, stretching endlessly outward. The longer you watch, the more meditative the process becomes. Your body slows, muscles lose tension. What begins as simple astronomy morphs into something internal. The clear sky seems to mirror your own awareness, stripped of barriers, exposing patterns and thoughts without obstruction. Each star strikes as a singular point, but together they form networks greater than the sum of parts. In the same way, every breath and heartbeat inside your chamber echoes the persistence of life in a place absent of it. Night becomes not a confrontation with emptiness, but a collaboration. You discover a way of resting your consciousness within that vast silence, drawing peace rather than unease. Emotions shift again when you imagine time. The surface outside remains dozens of degrees below freezing, stone crust crackling in that cold. Above, meteors travel with nothing to slow them, crossing atmospheres so thin they may reach the ground intact. On this isolated frontier, you are exposed, yet your shelter holds. You think of explorers, of how often people across history stared at night skies, wondering what awaited beyond. Tonight on Mars, the questions reverse. Here you already stand beyond that horizon, gazing from the other side. The silence itself becomes an answer, not in words, but in weight. It presses softly against you, teaching patience, reminding you that time outlasts storms, that cold outlasts days, and that endurance itself writes history. Within this meditative stillness, your senses begin to sharpen. You hear the small sigh of your own breath inside your mask as you inhale, then let it out slowly to match the cadence of the fans. You feel the faint pressure of blankets against your skin, warmed by circulating coils built into the module's bed surface. With no sound outside but endless depth above, each detail grows larger than life. Every system hum, every heartbeat inside your own chest holds more importance than they ever did on Earth, where they were drowned or concealed by other noise. Here they stand distinct, present as proof you are alive and safe. This sensation that being alive carries sound resonates with power in a place so profoundly mute. Night continues stretching onward. Time seems slowed, almost suspended, as cold beyond remains immeasurable, and stars above hold position across an infinite backdrop. The moonless quality of many nights is different here. Yet tonight, your eyes eventually notice faint movements. Not everything overhead is still. Against the great dark, specks shift slowly from one edge of sight to the other. They are not stars. They are closer, smaller, tied to this planet rather than the cosmos at large. These movements signal the presence of companions, however distant, Phobos and Deimos, the twin moons of Mars. One races swiftly, the other drifts. Together they write delicate traces across the otherwise motionless sky. Their arrival breaks the silence not by sound, but by presence. This transition brings you forward from meditation into gentle anticipation. The stillness of Martian night lingers in your body, but now your awareness rises higher. You prepare to watch these two satellites orbit in their unique rhythms, reminders that even amid silence, the sky always holds motion. Your eyes follow those faint points above the horizon, turning to witness how deeply different moons reveal themselves here. Outside remains cold beyond comprehension, but inside, with eyes wide open, you carry the stillness of night into this next chapter, where the movements of Phobos and Deimos fold quietly into view. What is it like to watch two moons rise and fall so differently than the one that orbits Earth? You step outside into night, the air biting cold, though unfelt, through the layered warmth of your shelter. The Martian sky spreads above you without haze, filled with tight, polished stars. But among them move two familiar markers. They are not the large, luminous sphere you once knew, but smaller, irregular bodies that shift with their own unique rhythm. Your gaze settles on the first, Phobos, hanging higher than you expected, its outline clear against the black backdrop. At first it seems distant, but as you track it, you realize it carries a pace far more urgent than Earth's lunar companion. It does not linger steady in one position for long. Instead, it has begun a swift trek across the night, cutting a visible path over the course of hours rather than nights. Phobos orbits quickly, completing its journey around Mars in just a little over 7 hours. This constant rush means it rises not once each night, but twice on every Martian sol. You sit quietly and watch, following its slow growth at first. As it rises, it appears slightly larger, its proximity to the horizon magnifying its size against the line of black that cuts the world below from the sky above. Its shape is irregular, not a perfect globe, but more like a rough stone carved by chance rather than symmetry. Craters mark its surface, long grooves etch across, signs of impacts and stresses carried through its small, rigid body. Light from the distant sun reflects against those uneven surfaces, leaving it patchy in brightness, even with the naked eye. You survey it carefully, and with each minute, its arc across the sky becomes more pronounced. The contrast is startling if compared to Earth's moon. That familiar sphere seems steady, shifting across the heavens over many nights in gradual rhythm. Phobos does not give you that illusion of stability. Instead, it races, crossing horizon to horizon faster than you would have thought possible for a moon. You notice how it grows as it climbs, then gradually shrinks again as it travels toward the opposite edge of the sky. Perspective alters it constantly, near, then far, large, then small. You find yourself blinking a few times, surprised each time by how quickly it sweeps forward. This restless pace brings a strange energy to the still Martian night, as though even the heavens here refuse to remain motionless. Deimos, by contrast, has none of that rush. If Phobos is urgent, Deimos drifts like a thought half-remembered. Fainter, smaller, and further away, it does not attach attention instantly. Only when your eyes shift carefully do you pick it out among the field of stars. It is there, hovering like a speck that barely stands apart from the countless other points of light. Yet you begin to notice its movement too. It moves, but at a pace so slow it seems nearly still to casual sight. Deimos takes about 30 hours to circle Mars, crossing the sky in gradual stretches. It does not rise and set repeatedly during a sol. Instead, it lingers, reminding you that motion in the universe can also be measured in patience rather than speed. Deimos wears a smoother face than its sibling. Its surface is covered in loose dirt that rounds the edges of old craters, filling them so they do not appear as jagged outlines from afar. This covering softens its look compared to Phobos, which appears scratched and scarred. In the sharp clarity of the Martian night, you glimpse Deimos as calm presence. It reflects faint sunlight with steady glow, perhaps less striking than Phobos, but more enduring in its stillness. Together, the moons compose a rhythm, one fast, one slow, one restless, one serene. As you sit outside, your breath steady and controlled, the sky above holds both moons at once, their differences unfolding before you in real time. To one side, Phobos pushes swift arcs, climbing and shrinking, its urgency pressing forward. To the other, Deimos drifts, so unhurried that its progress feels closer to the stars themselves. The two contrast each other completely, yet together they tell a single story of motion, stitched over this silent world. Mars's two companions, though small and irregular, succeed in giving its nights a rhythm. The rhythm settles into you as well. Your heartbeat aligns almost unconsciously to the pace, falling with Deimos's calm drift, then quickening slightly as Phobos races past in hours. You realize their stories intersect with your own. Days here pass differently than on Earth, and the moons serve as natural clocks overhead. Phobos, racing as it does, reminds you of the swift passage of a Martian soul, each lap marking the hours more quickly than familiar cycles. Deimos, drifting quietly across days, provides steadiness, a counterweight to remind you that not everything moves fast, and patience guides survival on this cold planet. The mythology behind their names surfaces in your thoughts briefly. They mean fear and panic, horses pulling the chariot of Ares, Greek counterpart to Mars. Yet up here in the sky, nothing feels frightening. Their presence does not inspire dread. It feels closer to comfort, soft reminders etched against darkness. Panic is absent. Fear does not linger. Instead, the twin moons feel like guardians perched above, marking time, guiding eyes upward in place of clocks and calendars. They take ancient names, but shape themselves into new roles here, beacons under which you sit quietly looking on. The science behind their presence only enhances that sense. Phobos travels so close to Mars that its orbit shrinks slowly, dragging it closer over geological time. One day in millions of years, it may fall and fragment, breaking against the planet or stretching into a ring. That future lies far ahead, far beyond your lifetime. Still, the knowledge stitches itself into your awareness. You realize that even the restless motion you track tonight is part of that gradual spiral downwards, a sign of time written in orbital decay. Deimos, far further out, avoids such fate, its course stable and gentle. Together they reflect histories larger than human scale, cycles that continue whether or not watchers remain alive to note them. Your eyes drift again to Phobos, halfway through its rapid arc now, and you calculate out of habit how soon it will vanish again beneath the horizon. You then return to Deimos, still scarcely moved, still marking slow continuity and contrast. The sight forces you to recognize how many scales of time exist in one field of vision. Hours and days collapse together into two bodies orbiting above, cycles overlapping, the fast, the slow. Time here is simultaneously compressed and expanded. The stars beyond care nothing for these local motions. They remain steady, glittering pinpoints, forming the backdrop to all this change. Against that field, the moons appear even more relatable, moving with a speed and pattern that makes sense to the human mind. You can follow them, track them, relate to them. Stars are permanent, endless, unreachable. These moons, though, are companions, close enough to connect with, predictable enough to rely upon. You begin to think of them less as distant satellites and more as nightly presence, arriving in steady pattern to reassure you of order in a universe often defined by chaos. Sitting beneath their light, your vision climbs again and again between the two. One pulls your attention in bursts of motion, the other recalls you after with its steadiness. The motions combine into a silent dance that speaks without words. It reassures you that even here, on a world stripped of familiar sounds and comforts, you remain watched over. The moons become your link, a sign that cycles continue no matter how far away you settle. Hours later, when you finally return to the shelter and look one last time, you feel that comfort in full. Phobos sinks toward the low horizon, shrinking until it blends with dust haze, vanishing to begin its swift return. Deimos remains, dim but persistent, soothing in its long drift. Both together remind you of the balance carried above this planet, fast and slow, near and far, urgent and calm. Their motions cradle you under stars, untouched by Earth's atmosphere, letting you align your breath and heart to the rhythm of alien skies. And as you lie back to rest, those rhythms linger within you, drawing your eyes closed, not in loneliness, but in reassurance. Above Mars, night is not empty. It is marked by companions in their eternal orbits, offering silent patterns that ease thoughts into calm. And as the moons continue on their paths, you allow their steady arcs to guide you inward, toward reflection carried not by words or voices, but by the silent cycles of celestial bodies moving faithfully above. After walking Mars, what remains in your memory as you prepare for rest? You have crossed a landscape no one on Earth has touched, and now that journey replays gently in your thoughts. Closing your eyes does not erase those scenes. It allows them to settle in, one after another, until they form a clear sequence. What passes before you is not a blur but a path, each step a marker on your mission, each memory an anchor to hold as you drift toward sleep. This is the final rhythm of the day, a quiet return to what was seen and felt, but softened, filtered, made calm. It begins at your landing. You recall the airlock opening, the soundless step onto soil that never knew a human footprint. The regolith scattered under your boots, fine grains floating slowly through thinner air, while your body felt lighter in Mars's reduced pull. You notice again how that sensation altered everything, movements unburdened, breath steady within your helmet, each moment precise. That first step was once filled with awe, but in memory it now feels gentle, almost like touching the ground for the first time in a lifetime of dreams. You hold this as the beginning of calm, the way the unfamiliar found balance. From there rises your base, the place that gave shelter. You hear again the clicks of clamps locking modules, the hiss of air filling the dome, fabric pulling out to full shape as heaters flickered on. Those sounds were practical, yet now they become more than function. They form a pattern, like instruments repeating in quiet sequence, hums of circulation, fans pushing warmth, pumps releasing oxygen. Within those steady rhythms, you recognized safety. Entering for the first time, you set the helmet aside and filled your lungs with air, not born of this planet, but prepared with care. That moment still lingers, the memory of a first breath in your home, away from home. Then comes the sky. You remember walking beneath muted hues of pink, butterscotch, and violet, each tone suspended by dust in air, too thin to mimic Earth. What felt vast above your head no longer frightens you. Instead, it rests like a canopy, softer than cloth, weightless yet present. In your reflection, you realize how light played not only across stones, but across your own visor, painting you into the Martian landscape until you became part of its palette. This memory is not dramatic. It is patient. It waits in your mind like a steady companion that follows wherever you go. Your thoughts travel next toward Olympus Mons. You saw it rise, gentle and immense, slopes expanding outward farther than your vision could follow. The massive volcano, 3 times taller than Everest, spread so widely that it became not simply a mountain, but a horizon entering your heart. In the act of reflection, you notice it differently. You no longer feel overwhelmed by numbers or scale. You feel the quiet authority of something that has stood for ages untold, not pressing down on you, but watching, a guardian always present. Its memory provides comfort now, a long shadow cast across your mind, not with threat, but with steadiness. The canyon follows, Valles Marineris, a cut across the planet so wide that it refused to hold its full shape in your sight. When you reflect on it now, you do not feel dizzy at its depths. Instead, you recall that grounding sensation as though staring into infinity made you more stable, not less. The cliffs, the shadows deepening into 7 kilometers of darkness, spread before you then. Tonight, they return in softer outline, their vastness a reminder that even in space where life is scarce, landscapes themselves can soothe. The canyon did not pull you downward. It held you still, an endless presence teaching you patience. The storm emerges in memory too, but its edges have softened. You watched particles sweep across the horizon, hiding structures, dimming color, muffling light. Inside your habitat, you heard the gentle rattling, dust tapping against fabric and metal, steady and persistent. What could have been fearsome became rhythm. Like rain without wetness, the storm lulled rather than startled. You remember the tremors that traveled faintly through the walls, small vibrations arriving like a second heartbeat. Now, as you reflect, you understand that those sounds were not threats. They were reminders of contact with a planet still alive in its own way. The storm reinforced your refuge, strengthening calm rather than breaking it. After the storm came night, cold beyond imagining outside, silence filling space that no voice touched. But within your dome there was warmth, light vibration, and steady hum of systems continuing without pause. Stars above appeared sharper than ever on Earth. No haze obstructed them. The Milky Way revealed bands like woven cloth across an infinite black. In remembering, you see again how stillness replaced loneliness, how absence became meditation. Each noise inside, the faint whir, your own breath's rhythm, turned into reassurance. The night became a mirror, reflecting your inner state, not emptiness, but calm acceptance. Into this scene entered the Mars moons, Phobos racing swiftly, crossing the sky twice each sol, always in motion, always shrinking and growing as it arced away. Deimos, faint but loyal, drifting patient, crossing days with ease rather than hours. Their presences overlapped. One gave you a clock in rapid cycle, the other gave a bomb in unbroken steadiness. Together they formed balance overhead. Names of dread from old myth lost their meaning. Instead of fear, you found reassurance. Satellites became guardians, motion turned into pattern, and patterns into rest. Remembering them now pulls your mind into rhythm as well, a cadence easing body into slower breaths. Each of these memories forms not simply an account of a mission, but a meditation. You revisit them one by one as thought passes slowly across your inner vision. This act of reviewing builds continuity, like stitching a journey into one fabric. It quiets wandering thought, drawing it instead toward a single narrative, your narrative here. In returning to first steps, base, sky, volcano, canyon, storms, night, and moons, you complete a circle. Completion itself carries calm, a signal to the body that nothing is left unsettled, that the day has closed. Tension you once carried loosens, softened into a sequence ending in rest. You may notice how the challenges folded inward. Dust storms, freezing cold, the loneliness of distance. Each could have stood as threat. Yet in the memory they appear transformed. Each hardship provided not anxiety but reflection. Storm became lullaby, silence brought meditation. Vastness produced grounding rather than fear. In holding those transformations, your mind rewrites difficulty into resilience, framing them as parts of calm experience. This reflection confirms that you are safe, that trials themselves have softened, and that the mission continues not in unease, but in balance. Now, as you lay back on the rest frame, you breathe slowly. Each inhale fills not with worry, but with fragments of memory, soil crunching under boots, fabric domes rising, the pink spill of light across dust, the rushing forward of a restless moon. Each exhale releases the body's weight, letting muscles unwind until all tension seeps away. This breathing follows the reflective meditation quietly. You watch memories enter and leave until they finally slow, until only stillness stays. This is the moment to allow yourself release. You are prepared not for another step across dust, nor for another observation through a visor. You are prepared to rest. The story of the day has been told in full, forming one continuous thread from arrival to now. Nothing remains open. Nothing waits undone. All that lies ahead is sleep itself, carrying you onward into inner spaces where memory transforms once again into dream. Outside, Mars holds to its silence. Inside, you remain wrapped within air, warmth, and order. The moons wheel on in darkness, tracing their rhythms whether seen or unseen. They will be there tomorrow as well, rising and setting, fast and slow, patient and rushing. The planet turns, storms gather and fade, nights pass, days return. Yet, you're at ease here, cradled by what has already been seen, guided by stillness. Close your eyes and let this reflection carry you further inward. Allow the rhythm of Mars, dust, silence, stars, moons, to draw your breath steady. The base holds secure, the land rests quiet. You drift now from wakefulness to gentle sleep. Mars began as a place of dust, storms, and silence, yet you shaped it into calm, turning its vastness into a sanctuary for rest. The challenges that once seemed harsh have become gentle rhythms that guided you towards sleep. Each night you can return here, walking again under pink skies, watching the quiet moons drift above, and finding safety within the hum of your shelter. Let this world remain open for you, an invitation to explore not only once, but whenever rest is needed. And as you close your eyes, remember, other worlds wait, carrying their own quiet wonders.